The Eater. A storm saved me from being axed by a guy suffering from road rage. We are all human, right? Well, so am I. And as a human, I am prone to making mistakes much like everybody else. This was one of the days that I was making a mistake. You see, at my home, I live with my mother and father, my aunts, and with many cousins. Although I am in college, I couldn't find accommodation, so I had to stay with them. I like my family, so it's not that bad most of the time, but there are instances where it is really inconvenient. For example, because there is so many of us, we can't buy too much nice food. So if I want KFC or something, then my best bet is to sneak out, buy it, eat it in a forest somewhere, before coming back home. It's annoying, but what else can one do? And so I was going to do the same thing again, except for one problem. There was a massive storm outside. Seeing that, I started to wonder if that was a good idea at all. But I felt it was. I needed time to be alone and to arrange my thoughts. And so, I got in the car and drove off. At some point as I was driving, there was a circle. I drove into the circle, deep in thought, and failed to notice something that I had done, apparently. I got to the KFC and bought what I went there for. Afterwards, I left for the car, and then when I got in, something completely unexpected happened. My mother called. She told me that she knew where I was, and before I could explain, also known as lie, she asked me to go buy some groceries at the store in a tone that said I'd be in a lot of trouble when I got back home. So, I gave in. I went out of the car to the stormy outside, where the clouds had covered the skies black, and the wind was so strong I could barely see around me. My eyes caught something completely hard to miss. A car with a black bull bar, driving at reckless abandon into the parking lot. I wondered what that guy was in such a hurry for as I walked into the store. In the store, I quickly picked up everything I needed, and I was standing on the line when the doors slammed open. Everyone got quiet and turned to the door. It was a fairly short man with a stubble on his face and an axe in his hand. He was screeching, "Whose car was that outside? Why did they cut him off? Can't they drive?" And stuff like that. The security tried to get to him, but he threatened to axe them and asked whose car was that. Well, it was quite an uncomfortable situation. I found myself feeling glad I had nothing to do with that. The guy was yelling outside, and people had started recording after I paid my things. I headed out the door, covering my head as the wind got severe. Then as I was walking down the road, my eyes ahead, I heard what sounded like a squealing pig. I turned around, and as I was turning, I had to spin to my side, right? And as I spun to my side, the axe passed past my face. The guy roared at me, and only then did I turn and run. It was me he was talking about. I ran as fast as I could, but the wind at this point was as strong as a wall, and I couldn't get far enough before he started yelling more obscenities. My foot tripped on something and I fell to the floor. At this point, I must have let out a bit of pee. People were standing there recording me, and while I should have felt embarrassed, I felt nothing other than raw panic, because the guy stood over me and lifted his axe over his head. But a strong gust of wind blew the axe out of his hand and onto the floor, much to my luck. I got up and tried to get the hell out of there. Only when I got home, my clothes completely wrecked, did I notice that I left everything I bought on the floor there. So I got into worse trouble with my mother, and she wouldn't even believe any of my story. The Hearer. I think I heard my neighbor killing his daughter, and I wrote a song to it. I don't know how jumbled this story will be, and if I'll even have time to apologize for it. But if it is, let me take the time to apologize now. I am writing this story very late into the night. I just couldn't sleep. So, I guess I will try to start at the beginning. I live in an apartment complex. Always have. I was born here and raised here. And so, a while back, my neighbor, let's call him Dimitri got married when I was still a child, and he had a beautiful daughter with his wife. But at some point, the two got divorced. I don't know the entire details, man, and honestly I don't care. I said I grew up in an apartment complex, and I wasn't lying. Most of my time was spent living inside, and I didn't bother myself with my neighbors or their news. I mostly just sit around and draw, write songs, or whatever. Anyway, he got divorced from his wife and was left with his daughter. There would always be yelling coming from there, carried over by the air to me. And I don't know why, because Dimitri was a pretty chill person to us. Anyway, so something horrible happened a few years ago. The daughter disappeared. Dimitri just came to our apartment one morning, saying she had run away. The whole apartment helped him look for her, placing posters all over the town and stuff. Those posters have been washed almost white now from the years of rain. She was never found. But that's not the strange thing. The strange thing is, at that time, I had been struggling to get in the zone. I had just started writing songs, and I remember I was working on one of my earliest albums at the time, when I heard it, a shrill high note. It sounded and disappeared, sounded, then disappeared again. Just like that, almost 3 times. It sounded... I'm sick to say it, man, but it sounded beautiful. As it flew into my room, because of the air, it was curved around the windowsill, and when it came into my room, it sounded good. I jumped out of bed and started writing, listening to the window as the sound came a few more times. And then it was quiet, forever. It was a sound I'd never heard before, and I've never heard it since. And the following morning was the morning when Dimitri came to our room. And now that I think about it, man, I think he must have been doing something at the garden outside. But I'm probably just speculating, trying to make everything fit now, but it's just jumbled. Anyway, after failing to find his daughter, everyone was sad for Dimitri. We sent him gifts, took him to vacations, and we held parties for him, and he seemed happy. In fact, he seemed too happy. Things were going so well for him. His wife got back with him, and through everything he was constantly smiling and laughing and thanking everybody. And never did it look forced. We just assumed he was just being polite to us, that in secret he cried for his daughter. But I'm starting to wonder how true that is. Man, I'm skipping ahead. Let me just get to the point. A couple of days ago, a horrible smell reached my room, carried by the air into my window. I didn't know where it was coming from, since there was no garbage outside of our window. I told my big brother about it, and he must have told Dimitri, because I heard fighting in Dimitri's house. He must have told Dimitri what I told him, that I thought it came from Dimitri's apartment. Then I heard they were going to call men to come and disinfect the house. The following morning, I saw Dimitri's wife leaving, and she drove off. I was busy sitting by my window and trying to get a drawing in under the moonlight when I saw moving in Dimitri's apartment. He was pulling something out of the roof. It was a massive black bag and it fell on the couch. Then he started dragging it to another room when he saw me looking at him from outside the window. The look that crossed his face was pure shock and panic. I smiled and waved at him and asked if he would like me to come help him. This is because I thought he had drugs in there or something. Dimitris smiled back and said no. Then he closed the curtains and he left. And at that moment, I remember I looked down and it just dawned on me. There used to be a flower bed outside his window. Now, it looked like it had been dug out. When did that happen, I wondered. I think it probably had happened by the morning. You'll see why I think that. Anyway, this morning, we were all to go to Dimitris' house to help pull out all the furniture so the man can come and disinfect his house. As they were pulling the furniture out, I looked around the place for the black bag, hoping to find a scoop of the stuff. He couldn't have hidden it far, since he only got to move it last night. But I couldn't find it anywhere, and I realized he could have hidden it in the basement of the complex. But as I was going through the hallway, I smelled something horrible again, and so I went down to the basement. But as I was walking through the hallways, a horrible smell hit my nose. It was that smell. This was the hallway where there weren't that many people living. So how could there be garbage? I followed the smell to a small closet, and when I opened, there was the black bag inside. It wasn't that big. In fact, it was the perfect size for a 6-year-old girl. I slammed the door shut, and while I was thinking what the actual hell could be going on, I heard someone asking me what's up. I turned to see Dimitri there. There was a thin smile on his face that didn't reach his eyes. I should have lied and said I came to look for brooms or a bucket or even cocaine, man. But nothing. I couldn't say anything. I could only stare at him. But that's when my brother arrived and asked we help him with the fridge. I don't know what the hell is going on in that apartment, man, or what the hell happened, but man, it does not even end there. Someone came knocking on our door tonight, and my brother went to go check. He says it was Dimitri, and he looked like he was holding a pipe and acting strangely. Did Dimitri try? But no. My brother was out there with his friends, all over 6 foot. I tried to sleep but couldn't, and went to open the window. But something told me to peek through the curtains first, and there he was. There he is still now. Dimitri is standing at the window, and he is watching my window. Man. The cleanser. Well, my friends, I was kicked off the state by a cult. So I'm not really much of a people's person. The only time I do talk to people is when I am in dire need. And needing a job constitutes a dire need for me. I lost my job and was really desperate for a new one. And I ended up finding one. As a janitor. I would be a janitor for this little cute hall downtown. No problem. I got there on my first day and cleaned in the morning without many problems. Later that night, I was to clean again, but when I got there, there were people. The guy who had hired me was standing on the front of the stage. Everyone was dressed in purple and black robes with hoodies on. It was almost like a movie, except the people held phones and were chatting and laughing with their neighbors, so I thought it was all a joke. But I'd quickly learn how mistaken I was. As the guy spoke on about energies, vibrations, and the healing of the power of slugs, I couldn't help wondering if anybody actually believed this. But no, everyone had dropped their phones and was listening intently to the teachings. The guy went on, And then the unthinkable happened. The guy said they would need a blood sacrifice for the cleansing ritual, and no one said a damn thing. Everybody just sat there and stared as if this was an everyday occurrence. What the actual? I couldn't believe my eyes. But before they could do anything, the door slammed open and the wind poured in. It blew violently in the room, pushing everybody's robes up. I had to run to the door and close it. When I was done closing the door, I turned and my blood just ran cold. All the eyes in the room were on me. I asked what the matter was. The guy said that there was a sign, that there was a doubter here who would ruin the energy. He told me that I had to cut my palm, drip my blood into the bowl he was holding to cleanse myself. I was desperate for a job, true, but not that desperate, so I said no. I got a few more jobs after that, but wherever I went, I always had members of that cult following me. They left letters in my mailbox and addressed me at work and stuff. Finally, I lost it and punched a guy at Walmart. That same day, there was a message outside my door. It was a letter, written simply, "Leave." It was written in blood. Well, maybe I would have better business prospects elsewhere anyway.